old sport. Today we're going to do The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Welcome to Billy's Books. Welcome to Billy's Books. Today we're going to do F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, a classic that I was made to read as a junior in high school. I picked a fight with my teacher, Mrs. Kirby, because she was talking all about the imagery and stuff in the book, and I was like, but isn't that just your interpretation? Isn't it all kind of subjective and it's fiction, so you're just in it? And she was like, she actually called me on it, and we had a special. She took me out of cafeteria to a side table in the cafeteria where everyone was looking and sat me down. And she was like, you know, you're being really contrary and stuff. And I said again, well, it's just interpretation. Can't, that's just because that's the feeling doesn't mean it's the way it is. And she was like, well, I've been supplying all this supporting stuff to show that, in fact, it represents this. And I have a lot of supporting quotes here and things like that. If you can provide other supporting quotes that support a different viewpoint, go right ahead and show me. And of course I was like, never mind. That was it, and she was right. There you go. And that was specifically about the sort of gray wasteland that appears in Long Island, sort of on the way between the city and where Great Gatsby and our narrator, Nick Carraway, live, West Egg and East Egg. And they're sort of across the water, or next door neighbors, or they're next door neighbors, and across the water is the object of Great Gatsby's affection, Daisy Buchanan, who is married to a brutal rich guy, Tom Buchanan. Their narrator, Nick Carraway, is a young man who just gets caught up in all these people, with all these people by living next door to Great Gatsby, Jay Gatsby, who is this rich guy who just has lots of parties and stuff. You probably know the story. If you don't, you should read the book and or watch the movie. Of course, the book is the masterpiece, and the movies just try to get to that, but they don't always succeed. Our narrator claims not to judge people, except he says that he has unaffected scorn for Gatsby, which is interesting because, as far as I can tell, during the book, he has a very sympathetic view of Gatsby. He's probably the most sympathetic person to Gatsby in the whole, all the characters. Once again, it is in Long Island where the rich folks live at the time, and Tom and Daisy Buchanan are a couple that, of course, Daisy Buchanan is the object of Gatsby's affection, and she clearly gets all flustered when he's around. Tom Buchanan doesn't notice. He also has his own, lover, who's like the wife of a gas station attendant or something. So Tom Buchanan is kind of a brutal guy. He sort of grabs you and pushes you around and tells you what to do instead of asking. Gatsby also is pushy, but he's gentle about it. So he'll be like, well, you're coming with me, old sport. And it's like, he doesn't grab you by the elbow and force you. He just tells you, and then you go along because he's a nice guy. Very different, but they both have the same I'm rich, you'll do what I tell you vibe for Nick. Daisy is kind of hard to read where she's coming from. Daisy and Tom are both rich and stuff. Tom doesn't just seem to be a kind of brutal rich guy. You get the hints that he's actually kind of a white supremacist because he keeps complaining about blacks and whites mixing and stuff throughout, and everyone just kind of looks the other way while he's saying it and stuff, and they may or may not agree with him, but they don't say it out loud. Anyway, what's great about, I think this is a great book that they force you to read because it's really incredibly well written. It's one of those books where basically every sentence or every description of every room, like if you just walk into the room, everything's just dripping with meaning. Every sentence just has some, isn't just superficially true, but also profoundly true. It's pretty intense. Everything's pregnant with meaning. I'm going to give you, now to undermine that, I'm going to give you an example, which probably doesn't fit that, but here we are. Remember I was talking about how Tom Buchanan was sleeping with some gas attendant's wife? Well, at that gas station, or in the house associated with it, there's a photographer. Mr. McKee was a pale, feminine man from the flat below. He had just shaved, for there was a white spot of lather on his cheekbone, and he was most respectful in his greeting to everyone in the room. He informed me that he was in the artistic game, and I gathered later that he was a photographer and had made the dim enlargement of Mrs. Wilson's mother, which hovered like an ectoplasm on the wall. His wife was shrill, languid, handsome, and horrible. She told me with pride that her husband had photographed her 127 times since they had been married. Gatsby clearly has a thing for Daisy Buchanan, and they seem to have a history, which is very vague. It takes the whole book to reveal what the history was. But Gatsby is rich and wants to show this rich lady his mansion, so he awkwardly shows her his mansion. But the reactions are strange. "They're such beautiful shirts," she sobbed, her voice muffled in the thick folds. "It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before." This is a book that just makes basically all the characters are despicable. You're even with the narrator, you're kind of like, why is he going along with these people, And he talks about sometimes trying to get out of it, and they tell him, no, stay and stuff. And I guess if you're a young man, that kind of peer pressure works. Though towards the end, he really gets fed up with them. There, I gave away something. And sort of, as he approaches 30, he starts, having a little more resolution for his own conscience. But anyway, I'm going to jump to the end here and just give you one last quote that kind of, I think, sums up some of the characters. "I couldn't forgive him or like him, but I saw that what he had done was, to him, entirely justified. It was all very careless and confused. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money, or their vast carelessness, or whatever it was that kept them together, and let other people clean up the mess they had made." That, in some ways, sums up this book. I find this book really enjoyable. The ending I find a little dissatisfying, but not enough to counter the greatness of the book overall. So, as you might expect with a masterpiece of literature, I recommend it. If you can't do, review.